Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday night. Thanks for being here. Earlier in the week, I teased that I had a great announcement for today, and I was waiting for one little tiny piece of the puzzle to get solidified. But I thought, since you're here, I'd tell you a couple of really exciting authors that are coming to talk in the next few months. So before I bring in our guests, let me just give you this exciting update real quick. So tonight is Farah Heron. She's talking about Accidentally Engaged. We're drinking a delicious drink. It's going to be fun. Then we have Zio Axelrod, The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes. Marissa Stapley's coming to talk about Lucky. Denny S. Bryce, Wild Women in the Blues. That book looks amazing. Wendy Francis, Summertime Guests. Pamela Kelly, The Hotel. Jennifer Rosner, and a World War II looks heartbreaking story called The Yellow Bird Sings. Jessica Hamilton, What You Never Knew. Hannah Mary McKinnon, You Will Remember Me. She's my first repeat guest. That's pretty fun. And then somewhere in there, I don't know how this is happening, but Jocelyn Jackson is coming to talk about what will undoubtedly be a blockbuster, Mother May I. She is like one of my favorite authors of all time, and I will try to keep it together and probably fail. So yay. But tonight we have Farah Heron here to talk about her beautiful book, Accidentally Engaged. If you're here and you have some questions for her, you just want to say hi and I really like the book, please post a comment. And if I see it, and I'm getting pretty good at that, we'll talk about it. But first, look at that cover. We're going to talk about illustrated covers, but that pretty much nails it. That nails this book. So I'm going to read the back cover copy because my mom likes that. And I'm going to ignore my dog who barked to leave and now is going to bark to come back in, and it shouldn't work that way. All's fair in love and baking. When it comes to bread, Rina Manji knows exactly what she's doing. She treats her sourdough starters like somewhat unruly children. But when it comes to Rina's actual family and their constant meddling in her life, well, that recipe always ends in disaster. Now Rina's parents have found her yet another potential good Muslim husband. This one has the body of Captain America, a delicious British accent, and lives right across the hall. He's the perfect mouth-watering temptation and completely ruined by the unwelcome side dish of parental interference. Rina refuses to marry anyone who works for her father. She won't be attracted to Nadim's sweet charm or gorgeous lopsided smile. That is until the baking opportunity of a lifetime presents itself. A couple's cooking competition with the prize of her dreams. Rina will do anything to win, even asking Nadim to pretend they're engaged. But when it comes to love, baking your bread doesn't always mean you get to eat it too. It's perfect. And here is the author. Hello, Far.
Hello.
When you hear the back cover copy of your books, are you always like,
Yeah, because it's nothing. So when you write a book, this one I had a full blurb written, which is basically a back cover copy, and this black cover copy that the publisher wrote sounds nothing like what I wrote. Because it just shows you that authors are not good at this. But no. I don't know how the magic at the publishers, I think it's marketing that writes them, but they do so well.
Yeah, I get bogged down every time in and then this person's keeping a secret, and then
focus on the wrong things, and yeah, totally.
And then in 1972,
totally.
So the first thing, there's a lot to talk about, but let's talk about this drink.
Yes,
we are having Guinness Dark and Stormies, which if you tell everyone what it is.
So mine's technically not Guinness. My husband brews beer, so we have like a little brewery in the basement, which is like super lucky. So this month he made a Guinness knockoff because of St. Patrick's Day. So this is his Irish stout, half ginger beer, Jamaican ginger beer, and then I put 2 ounces of rum in it because why not? And
that's what the recipe called for.
The recipe called for. And then blackberry syrup, because it's supposed to have blueberry syrup, but I didn't have blueberry, so I put blackberry.
And you know something? I thought, well, that blueberry syrup is for someone who wants like a super sweet drink, but I am missing a tiny little connection between the stout and the thing, and I think that blueberry syrup would have done it. Not that it's not delicious.
It's delicious. It's strong, but I mean, it's only half Guinness. Like the 2 ounces of rum.
If that's how you poured it, then that's.
don't know.
I
We'll see,
went to
we'll
go
see.
get I went to go get Guinness today, and I came home and I was like, Adam, there's like a shortage of Guinness. Like there's a problem with the delivery of Guinness. And he's like, Molly, it was
St. Patrick's Day was yesterday.
I did not connect those dots. Did you celebrate? Did you like corned beef? And
No, I think I had a glass of this Irish stout yesterday, but that was the extent of I don't know, everything with pandemic. Like I normally do, like, like go and make the corned beef and cabbage, and like I normally do St. Patrick's Day, but I feel like every holiday is just
yeah.
Just
Yeah, like we've been muscling our way through trying to make birthdays and holidays special. St. Patrick's Day gets nothing.
low in the tier.
So this book is, I mean, there is a lot of food in it, and it's food as love, it's food as therapy, it's food as memory, it's food as connection to home. It's like in some ways it's kind of like weaponized food between the sisters. Like, so when you were writing this, were you writing it during the beginning of the pandemic, or was it done way before?
It was done way before. This book had a bit of a journey. I actually sold it to Forever Publishing, is who with Grand Central's where it's published, and I sold it to them the same week that my debut came out, when Shy Factor came out. So it's been contracted for, like, that was what, a year and a half, just almost 2 years ago. It's been on contract, and I wrote it even at least a year before that. So it's been through a lot. I actually wrote it I guess it would be 2017 that I actually wrote the first draft.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been through a lot, and of course it's changed a lot since that early draft. It's been through a lot of revisions and different hands in it. But it's really, really funny that it ended up coming out now when everybody's baking sourdough. Everybody's stuck at home cooking. And I read a review for it where somebody was like, there's just kind of like this underpinning of kind of like loneliness in it, because the main character is kind of going through a lot, and her best friend isn't there anymore, and she's with people all the time, but she's just feeling like isolated. And I never really thought about how that kind of relates to what we're all kind of going through right now, where even when we're with people all the time, we're still feeling a little bit isolated and unsatisfied.
Well, it is surprising to me that you wrote it so long ago, because it does feel like something that is hitting a nerve of right now. And it is, of course, sourdough bread, but it is exactly, it's cheese. I mean, we'll talk about Rena in a second, but I was wondering, like, in terms of the food, was that in your intent the entire time to, like, I want to write a book about food?
Yes, because I love food as much as Rena does. So I definitely wanted to write a foodie book. I knew it would happen eventually, that a book would be, and of course, then everything became about food. Like you said, food became the things that, like, sparked her memories, and the way that she came together with Nadim and her relationship with her parents. It all ended up being about food. And I think that was very much the way I see food as well, that so many of my memories and things like that. My family isn't as foodie as me, so it's mostly just me, unlike in Rena's family, where they're all kind of talking about food or interested in food, bringing each other food. But yeah, so I wrote it to be a foodie book, and then it became even more foodie than I expected, I think.
Right, the sourdough, when no one could get yeast, and you were writing books that make you want to.
I know,
for sure.
Really.
I thought it was beautiful, and I was wondering as you were writing it, and this is a writer question, did you hit a wall on? You're like, oh, another description. Like, now I've got to describe she's making a cracker. Like,
No, I really do love food as much as her. So I actually think we ended up removing a lot of the food.
I mean, I don't want to imply that there was like too much food, because there 100% wasn't. I was in it for every description, but I know as a writer, when you're making, it's like when you're writing a love scene and you're like, oh, another love scene.
Yeah. No, I didn't feel that at all with food descriptions. A lot of other descriptions. I don't consider myself a very scene-centered writer. Like, I don't write scenery or things, which is funny because people say that I do, but I've always said, oh, I'm terrible at settings and such like that. But I don't consider myself to be a very descriptive writer. But then with food, I don't even think I noticed I was doing it. I was just like, she's having a cracker. What's the cracker like?
I have no idea what she's wearing or what room.
I have no idea. Yeah, we have to actually add some physical description in it because I don't describe people. That's just never something I do automatically. And my critique partners and my editors are like, you need to, what are they wearing? What are they looking like?
I never put anybody in clothes either.
Yeah.
It's just so boring to me. Well, but then it's not like, then you get into it like, oh, the clothes, you know.
The book I actually just finished editing is my YA that's coming out later this year. And it's about a fashion designer. So like you said, with clothes, I don't normally worry that much about what they're wearing. But for this one, as much food description as in an Accidentally Engaged, this one has clothes description. She notices what everybody's wearing first, and she's always talking about what she's wearing. And that makes sense for the character. But it was quite like, it was a little bit more of a not as natural for me to think that.
And that has to be a little bit hard in pandemic times.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're not seeing clothes. You have no idea. Like I couldn't, I mean, not that I would ever know anyway, but like, you know, what is fashionable?
Yeah. And also teenagers. I'm not a teenager. So like, I thankfully I have two in the house. So I had my son actually share a Pinterest board. Like he and I shared a Pinterest board while I was writing the book. So because I kind of sneakily found out that he has a little secret Pinterest board of fashion, which I didn't know. I didn't know my son was into fashion. Now hopefully he doesn't see this, but so I added him onto my research one. So he started putting all these like clothes that he likes. So all of the fashion in it is really his taste, which is kind of cute.
That is the most adorable
so cute.
Mom teenager.
So cute.
That is so sweet.
Yeah.
Man. You know, another thing that really occurred to me as I was reading this book was how self-aware your heroine is. Like she's really, really self-aware. And it made me think of like sort of like romance in general and how, you know, we were cursed for so many years with these sort of, you know, too stupid to live heroines that were needed to make certain plots happen. And we're a product probably of lazy writing in the times and all, you know, a thousand other things, but how self-aware Rena is. Well, and you still got to touch on some of those really, really classic romance plot points. Like you got to have a bit of a misunderstanding, right? And a lot of conversations that nobody was going to have, but you were able to like, which is like a standard romance thing where like, if they have the conversation, it'll get cleared up. But you made it so believable and current and self-aware that it was like a little magic trick. Like, how do you get to have a Harlequin presents conflict with a thoroughly modern heroine? So I was wondering, how did you, like, what was your creation of how did you put her together? Like,
see, this is not something I'd ever actually thought about that I had done that. So I'm a little bit newer in the whole romance thing. So I've only started reading it in my 30s, maybe 10 years ago. And I only started writing in 2015, I think. I don't remember. So not that long ago. So I'm newer at this. So I don't read those ones where the character, like I've come across those really, really moronic heroines that are just like, just say something or be aware of yourself. And I usually don't finish reading it. That's not for me. So I very much wrote what I think modern romance should be, is an intelligent, feminist, honest heroine. And I think that realism, I mean, it's crazy to say that I write realism because I don't, because there's like wackadoo things happening in this book, right? But I do try to make the emotions as realistic as possible and the reactions. With Rena especially, she consciously pushes everything aside. She has this thing where she says deflect and distract, where she doesn't want to have that conversation. So it allows me to, it does two things. First of all, it's a realistic way that people react to trauma and to stress, right? Is you just don't want to think about it, don't want to talk about it. But it also gave me a little trick where I could get around those misunderstandings. Like if she was willing to face her problems face on instead of distract herself from them, then maybe those misunderstandings wouldn't have happened, right? She would have had that conversation with Nadine, even with her parents. Like there's so much she didn't know about her parents because she'd never talked to them. She consciously made that choice not to. So the choice was her coping mechanism, but it also gave me the ability as the writer to have all those misunderstandings and to have all those things that she learns about her parents over the course of the book and learns about her sister and about her fiance, boyfriend, whatever he is at the time. So it was kind of that's kind of where I saw like that deflect and distract, and that her being self-aware, that she always knew she was doing it.
Well, it was like, I mean, you write this incredibly, what in it, you're right. Like, are we writing realism? No, to some extent, of course not. But you have to have that entry that feels realistic. Otherwise, I feel like contemporary romance doesn't work. But you have these two getting closer and closer, and the attraction is there, and there's a reason why they shouldn't be together, and all this stuff. And then like he's about to say like, maybe you should, and she's like,
no.
No, I in fact, not only am I not interested in what you're going to say, but there's a whole bunch of stuff I should say too, and I'm not going to say it.
I'm not going to say that either. Yeah.
And it's like, part of me was like, that shouldn't work so well. It totally works. Like,
their complication. Like, I always thought that she's very much coming into this relationship as if it's just a dating situation. She's not looking at the fact that her parents want them to get married, that they're pretending to be engaged. All of that is background. And she's like, well, if I was just getting to know somebody, I wouldn't tell them about all of these skeletons in my closet, all these things in the past, right? I wouldn't introduce them to my crazy family if I'd only had 2 dates with them. So that's the way she's going into it. But she can't. She's just not living in a bubble. She can't escape the fact that, one, they're pretending to be engaged, which is messing with her emotions, but also her family and his family are so intertwined. There's just all sorts of stuff.
And all of that felt really believable and real. And in fact, it was so nice to have a paperback. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I've gotten so used to reading digitally that it was so nice to have a paperback. And I thumb-eared a page because I wanted to read this, and it was like, again, it felt like a little magic trick that you did, where it was like, in the smack dab middle of the book, I'm going to tell you what the entire book is about, and your jaw's gonna drop a little bit, and you're gonna be so excited to keep reading. And this is even from like a secondary character. She says, of course, Marley glanced out over the tiny parking lot behind them, the sun highlighting her high cheekbones in perfect relief. She sighed. It's kind of ridiculous. Our parents force us to be so secretive because we'll never meet their expectations. And then they tell us to keep their secrets to save face. We're all suppressing deep feelings and traumas, and no one can support each other like a family should. She paused, stretching her nose. This family is completely fueled by secrets. Yep. I was like, there's your theme. Like, it was just. Yeah.
It was a little hint that more secrets were going to come out.
Yeah, well, we were only in the middle of the book.
Yeah.
The other one of the fun things about, and I was trying to think, and there's just no way, this has got to be the first romance I've ever read where Lice plays.
I still can't believe I got away with that. My editor was not impressed. I love my editor so much, but the first time I met with her, we had lunch together. So going back, like, this is where I told you the book's been contracted for a while. So we had lunch together, and she very tactfully, she says, like, there's just one thing that's concerning us a little bit.
Us? We've talked about it. There's been a meeting.
So we did end up toning down they never told me to get rid of it. I mean, the editors are very like, this is your book, it's your baby, to get rid of the whole Lice subplot. But I did tone it down a bit. I made it less obvious.
Like what? Okay.
So originally, she, like, the way the book ended up is that she thinks she has lice and she doesn't, but originally she had lice and she had bugs crawling through her.
Fair. That's fair. That's fair. And but it did that thing again. Like, it was this other little magic trick. And I mean, one of my questions for you today was like, how hard was it to be funny in an unfunny time? But you you clearly wrote this in funnier times.
Yeah.
But it did this.
It is hard to still be funny right now, because I have written 2 books during the pandemic, and
Two,
yeah. And I had just started my next YA today, actually. I'm just staying busy, I guess.
Well, I want to finish the Lice,
Yes.
and then we'll talk about that. But I mean, it did this thing where they were sort of, you know, there was not much else for them to. It brought them back together. There could have been another like chance meeting in the hallway. They live right across the hallway from each other, but this Lice, and then it made he had to be in her hair. You know, like it was so romantic, and I just found it incredibly tender and hilarious. I mean, Lice.
So I'm not the only one that did this. It was actually really funny. Schitt's Creek has a scene with Lice in it as well. And I was on the treadmill one day while I was editing the book, and I watched Schitt's Creek on the treadmill, and I saw that Lice scene. And it was the same thing where the couple is like having this incredibly romantic, tender moment because he's checking her for lice. I think in the Schitt's Creek one, she actually did have lice.
Yes.
So then I freaked out. I'm like, everybody's gonna think I copied Schitt's Creek, and I went looking up to see when the original episode aired. And yeah, it did air around the time that I wrote it, but I hadn't seen it till after. So I'm not the only one that thought of that. But I mean, I have kids.
You and Dan Levy.
Yeah, me and Dan Levy were the only ones. I have kids, and my daughter was going through this like nonstop lice where it just like we went through a year where every time we thought it was gone, it was coming back. And so I was spending so much time like in her head, like combing out her hair all the time. And I realized it's a very personal thing, obviously.
So intimate.
Her hair. I was like, what would happen if a guy was doing this? Because that's the way my mind thinks, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna put this in there.
It totally worked. It totally worked, and it was probably better that she didn't have lice, like in terms of the timeline. But
yeah, no, my editor was absolutely right. As much as I at the time, I'm like, no, why can't she have lice? But no, this was definitely because we don't need to go there. It's still supposed to be romance, happily ever after.
I remember in the beginning of the pandemic, like one of the few times that I we have a dog, and I would walk the dog, and but I would do it in a way that I wouldn't see people. And so it was one of the first times that I actually saw people out on the street, and I ran into this mom friend, and it was that kind of like, you know, she's on one sidewalk, I'm on one sidewalk. We're so delighted to see each other. We're shrieking. We're just so happy. And she was like, hey, you know what would make quarantine worse? And I was like, I can't imagine. I have no idea. She's like, all 4 of us have lice.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that is brutal. Anyways, weird lice tangent we've been on. The other thing that I loved about the book is how well-rounded this cast is, right? Like that you have, and there are a lot of secondary players that have varying degrees of input and that serve one subplot and don't, you know, like there's all these different things that sort of happen. The sister, the relationship she has with her sister, was great. It rivaled the romance for me. Can you talk to us about like where that came from and you know how you worked it out?
So the sister, my debut, The Chai Factor, which came out like now it's been almost 2 years. Rena and Syra were both in that book. So Rena is the main character from The Chai Factor is Amira, who's in Accidentally Engaged. So during the Chai Factor is when Syra was hospitalized. That happens during the course of that book. So Rena is struggling with having this very difficult relationship with her sister, but we're only seeing Rena's side of it. Syra is barely in the book at all. And we're actually seeing it through Amira's perspective.
Right.
So that was always something that I had imagined. I had originally written Syra to have a more serious eating disorder. And it was kind of like a contrast to Rena's food thing, her obsession with food and her food blogging. I needed some family crisis food related in Rena's family. So then when I wrote this book, I knew I had to. So if a lot of, at the time, a lot of readers of the Trifactor said that they hated Syra. I had people after tell me, I love the characters. I'm so excited to see Rena's book, but you're not going to put Syra in it, right? Like people told me they really didn't like her. And understandably, because she wasn't sympathetic at all. No, not at all in Trifactor. And again, but we were seeing her through 3 different like POVs, right? So when I wrote it, I was debating whether to even have Syra in the book, whether it would be an important,
wow.
because I knew that readers hadn't liked her. And I mean, it's a different publisher and it's totally up to me. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to have this. I don't know if I want to turn this into a sister story, but their relationship is so freaking complicated. Even before the book starts, I've already established that they have this very complicated relationship. So it's like, maybe I'll just like send Syra away. And then I'm like, well, let's see if I can do it. If I can redeem this character that people already told me they don't like. And I needed to make her lovable. I needed to make people actually, not just the relationship between the two of them, but I wanted people to actually enjoy Syra for who she is. So I gave her a really weird personality, and she did a lot of like wacky things and said things without thinking. And so I knew that would help. But redeeming their relationship was tricky. It took a lot of like, like you revise it, you tweak what they say and whatnot. And I think it was successful because now readers are like, I love Syra. Are you going to give Syra a book? I was like, no, I'm definitely not giving Syra a book at this point.
Make up your mind, readers.
Different readers. I'm finding, especially because I'm with 2 different publishers, Trifactor was a smaller Canadian book, while this one is got an American release. So most of the people haven't read. So everyone's like, I love Syra. Are you going to write more about her after this book? And then the last one was like, oh, I hate Syra. Don't put her in her next book. So
it is sort of a funny comment on redeeming. I mean, nobody likes particularly in romance, the unlikable heroines, but that fringe character that causes problems, whose point of view we never get, who we only get one side of the story. It's so easy to redeem that character by just giving them some word count. It's part of the fun of it. Like it's part of the thrill of, oh, you didn't like this character. Well, I'm going to write 100,000 words, and now you're going to like this character, because like in so many cases, people are redeemable. That's part of the.
But maybe as another writer, like when I create a character, there's always a reason for the way they are, they are. Even my biggest antagonists there's always a backstory in my head. Half the time it doesn't make it onto the page, but there's always more to it. And Syra, I always imagined as she had this mental illness she was dealing with, and she kind of had like some terrible stuff happen to her. So she had a very good reason for being so terrible. Now, all of that may not have come out on the page, definitely not in Trifactor, but now I had more time with her. So Syra didn't change. It was just I was able to spend more time with her and put more of her on the page.
She was such like the writer part of me. She was such an integral part of your main character's arc, but she also like served all this plot purpose. Like she's the one who sort of came with like the, hey, have you seen them? Like she just became this like very important character, and it was prickly and it was nuanced, and I loved her. I loved that relationship. That was well done.
I love writing sisters. Maybe because I have a sister that I like. I enjoy that relationship. But I think that where you're 2 very, very different people, but you're so close. It's very strange, and it's very interesting to write more about.
Yeah, that's true. So you've been writing 2 books. You have a YA. Is it a YA series? Tell us what's happening next.
So next I have I have 2 YA books. One's coming out at the end of this year, and then the second one will be the end of next year. So we just finished the one that's coming out this year. I just finished Edits on it. And the 2 books are about sisters. So going back to I love writing sisters, but their stories the 2 sister stories aren't that close together. They're not very close sisters, but mostly because I just wanted the same backdrop of the same family. So the one that's coming out next year is called Tahira in Bloom. And it's about a fashion designer who ends up moving to this teeny little town near Niagara for the summer. And she ends up entering this flower sculpture contests because it's like a big flower town. And then she falls in love with the boy next door who's obsessed with plants. So
how was the transition to YA?
Oh, it's tricky. I thought it would be easier. No, I don't want to say I thought it would be easier, but it helps that I have teenagers because I can ask them questions and understand their lives. Because without that, I would how would you say this? The nitty gritty of it is the tricky part. Like I said, the clothes that they wear, the slang they use. Would somebody do this? That stuff is the part that I'm finding a little bit trickier because I'm so far removed from that. But
our teenager years are so different than teenager years.
But really, to get inside the head of a teenager is fine. I'm not having an issue there. I used to actually work with teenagers. My last job before writing was a youth counselor. So I worked with troubled teenagers every day, like 12 to 15 of them a day.
Wow.
So I don't have an issue with understanding the way they think. Basically, you just have to write as if you're writing an adult, but a lot more I don't want to say self-absorbed in a bad way, but really a lot more thinking about self more, basically thinking about your importance in the world more, or struggling with who you are or what you are. But at the same time, you can have a lot of fun with different characters and different slang and stuff like that.
So when does the first one come out?
First one comes out, I don't have a release date yet, but it'll be this year. End of the year.
Busy,
yeah.
Not the pandemic slowed down.
No. And then I have my next adult will be out. Again, I don't have a release date, but I'll have another adult book, another adult rom-com out next year. So 2 books this year, 2 books next year.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's gotta feel like a grind, I know, but how are you feeling? How has it been promoting in pandemic? Because Chai Factor came out. I mean, you had a beautiful release party with a Barber Street.
Yeah, we had the barbershop quartet at the release.
Barber Street.
Barber Street.
So how have you found it? How have you found it in pandemic times? Easier, harder?
Yeah, it's in one way. I've been doing a ton of these virtual events, and I don't mind them. I think they're great. I don't have to get dressed or anything, but I think. I am missing that connection, even just I've barely left the house in a month. Just seeing the book in bookstores, meeting readers. Yeah. And it feels weird. I feel like I'm kind of detached from the release a little bit. But I don't know. It's fine. It's a lot of work. I mean, releasing, especially since this release has been so much bigger than my last one. The last one was, because it was a Canadian release, it was kind of a smaller book. So I thought it was I'm really busy. And then I'm like, whoa, that was nothing what I was expecting.
It feels like because digital events have caught on in a way. Oh my God, this dog. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Come on. Oh, sorry. She barks to be let out and then barks to be let right back. And I shouldn't let her win, but I don't know. Because these digital events have caught on, and they're so easy, you just keep booking them up. You just keep.
Yeah.
So we've got a few more minutes, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I've started to do these little Proust questionnaires.
Okay.
So it's usually 30 questions. If you are interested, Vanity Fair does these with celebrities, and it's pretty fun. Dan Levy, your mind meld partner. I'm only doing 10 questions, and I've actually added some to reflect a foodie.
Okay.
Right? So the idea is that I'm going to ask you these questions, and you're going to kind of rapid fire answer. You can't think too long about it. Go with your gut.
Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Best meal.
The meal, probably the one I just ate. I did the TikTok pasta with the feta and the tomatoes.
It's pretty good. Worst meal.
Anything with green peppers.
Oh. Comfort food. What's your comfort food?
Bread. Definitely bread.
One food you hate.
Going back to green peppers.
Sure.
It's pretty much the only thing I will not eat.
Okay. I want to ask so many follow-up questions, but this is Your favorite cocktail or drink?
What's the Moscow Mule? I really like ginger beer.
Best job you ever had?
Listcraft, which most people would not know. It's a very old Canadian craft store that used to be in malls. So we sold like knitting supplies and paint and things like that. And I worked there in college, and it was so much fun.
All right. Greatest fear?
Greatest fear, snakes.
Greatest extravagance?
Vacations. I've been on a lot of big ones. We went to Tanzania a few years ago, did a cruise of the Baltic. We went to Scotland right before all this happened.
Greatest achievement?
Getting a book published, probably. And now two.
And 4 more in the pipeline.
And a bunch more in the pipeline.
If you die and get to come back, what is the person or thing you would like to come back as?
Probably my cat, because life is good for the cat.
This dog?
Yeah.
Man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come and hang out with me. I know that you've been busy. I really do appreciate it. And I loved your book. Everybody out there, go pick up Accidentally Engaged, Chai Factor. Keep your eye out for these beautiful YAs. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you.
Awesome. Everybody out there, wear a mask, get the vaccine when you can, have a drink and read a book. Thanks, guys.